but if you have any concerns, please let us know. So welcome to the Household Electrification from the Consumer Perspective webinar. My name is Baran Yıldız. I'm from University of New South Wales School of Photovoltaic and Renewable Energy Engineering. This project lead is Solar Analytics, and Tom is here to present on behalf of Solar Analytics. We have Rewiring Australia as a project partner. Josh is here to present. We have 1 Million Women as another project partner. Jemima here is also to present with us. And we have Reclaim Energy, and Saeed will be with us shortly also. So an exciting set of presentations and topics that we will cover. So we might as well kick off. First of all, we would like to acknowledge the country where we live in Sydney, Gadigal of the Eora Nation. And we would also like to pay our respects to the elders, both past and present. And just a disclaimer, the views expressed herein are not necessarily the views of Australian government. And Australian government does not accept responsibility for any information or advice contained within this webinar. And this project received funding from the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, ARENA, as part of ARENA's Advancing Renewables program. So we have quite an exciting schedule today. Myself and Tom, we will start presenting an overview of the data analysis and insights from the customer use of the tool that Tom will go through, followed by Josh from Rewiring Australia. Then we will go to 1 Million Women presentation by Jemima. And then Saeed will give us information on Reclaim Energy, more heat pump technical side of things. And then we will close off with questions and answers and discussions. So first off, Tom from Solar Analytics will start the discussion by presenting the Solar Maximizer tool that Solar Analytics have built as part of this project. On to you, Tom.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. My name's Tom from Solar Analytics, and I'll be talking about this Solar Maximizer tool that we've made, which I will demonstrate shortly. But this tool is basically funded by ARENA. So it's called the Smart CER Consumer Uptake Tool Project, CER being Consumer Energy Resources, sometimes called DER, Distributed Energy Resources. Basically what it is, it's an online calculator aimed at encouraging households to purchase more solar if they already have it, and electrify their homes. I'll talk a little bit about how the tool we're making is different to all the other tools that are available online shortly. But the goals are simple: educate households on electrification, provide simple, personalized, and unbiased recommendations to people to basically help them action those insights that we're providing them. Another part of the project is to evaluate and demonstrate smart hot water control. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. And yeah, the outcomes of the project are basically to increase the uptake of rooftop solar and smart energy. So when I talk about smart energy, I'm talking about things that can be controlled, turned on and off, hot water, batteries, that kind of thing. And accelerate the electrify everything transition, which is what we're talking about here today. So yeah, the purpose is to make an online tool, which we have made. And I think the easiest thing to do is give a demo. Following this demo, Baran will basically show insights from people that have used the tool. So that'll probably be most interesting to a lot of the people on this call. So what kind of things are people, what defines their household, how much energy they're using, do they have solar, do they not, are they interested in heat pumps, electric vehicles, batteries, that kind of thing. But before we get there, I'll just demonstrate the tool that we've come up with. So this is the very first version of the tool, and it's a work in progress, but let's go through. So this is on our website, and I'll share the link in the chat and after the webinar. So I'll put in my name here. Oops. And electrify.com. So we do use the postcode to basically personalize the results that we're going to show. So that's the thing. So on this next screen, hopefully I'm zooming in enough. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Hopefully that's better. Just some questions about the household that the user who's using the tool. So for me, I have three, maybe two and a very small child. So let's go with three. I don't have rooftop solar, which my boss hates. I'm on off-peak electric storage. I don't have a swimming pool and I don't have an electric vehicle. Now the tool asks us some information about our energy bill. You can enter it manually or upload a recent bill, which is what I'm going to do. So I'll just browse a file that I have here. I'm going to confirm that. And that's kind of uploaded that and passed the information that we need. So my daily usage and my electricity plan structure. At this point, I'll just make it clear that we're not saving anything that gets uploaded. So all the data we do save here is anonymous and it's not used for marketing, or we don't email people or anything like that. The tool is purely educational. So same with the electricity bill, that's not saved anywhere. So I'm going to confirm that. I do work from home on the weekday and we don't use heating or cooling. So these questions are basically used by us to define the electricity, the energy usage profile that we're going to kind of run simulations on. So I'll run next and I'm going to get a bunch of results here. So at the moment in the tool, in this first version, we're basically recommending three scenarios. One is to get solar, or if you already have solar, to get more solar. I specified I didn't have solar, so this is a new system. The other is solar plus a battery, and the other is solar plus a heat pump. The next version of this tool will have more hot water options. We chose heat pump because it was kind of a simple option to go for at the moment, but obviously there are plenty of other great ways to save money and electrify, timers, diverters, going off peak, whatever. We're going to add more options for hot water there. But let's say I'm interested in solar and I can learn a little bit more about the savings and what kind of rebate is included in this cost estimate and the yearly breakdown and that kind of thing. And we can go next. And basically at the end here, a key part of this project for us is not only making simple recommendations to the user, but getting them to action those recommendations. So we have some options here. We can send an email summary, which is basically just all the information they've input and that we're recommending that they could go on hand to a retailer to help them get a proper quote, or a get me quotes option, which right now basically takes them to Solar Quotes to get some quotes online. I mentioned that we feel our tool is a little bit different to the others online at the moment. And the main reason for that is that we use all the current solar analytics customer sites to power the tool. So we've got tens of thousands of customers using our software. So we see their energy usage every day, their solar generation, what kind of appliances they have, how they're using them. So we kind of use all that data to power the tool. So rather than just equations in the background, it's more data driven. So hopefully providing a more realistic experience or recommendation for those who are using it. I'll stop there. I think I've taken up enough time. I guess what I'm hoping to get out of this in the Q&A is any suggestions for what you'd like to see in the tool or what you think maybe is not useful for consumers. Like I said, the purpose is to get people to get homeowners talking to retailers, getting quotes, installing solar, electrifying things. So anything we can do to make this better in that regard, we're interested to hear about. Okay, I'll pass back to you, Brian.
Cool. Thanks, Tom. So I will talk a little bit about the preliminary data analysis / insights that we've extracted from the way users have engaged with this tool. So there were around 50,000 total users, and amongst them, 15,000 were unique users. So some have used multiple times, and you can see the proportion of users across different states. And New South Wales has the majority of participation, followed by Victoria, Queensland, and South Australia. And this is relatively surprising for me, but yeah, gas was the dominant hot water system amongst these users. Almost 1/3 of them had an instantaneous gas water heating system. And this was followed by gas storage system and electric heating on a continuous supply and electric system on an off-peak. And we saw around 10% heat pump as well. So this just shows how much opportunity there is in terms of electrifying our households from gas water heating to electricity. In terms of the solar system size of the users, 40% of the participants did not have solar. Around 40% have systems that were either equal or less than 6 kilowatts, and another 20% had bigger systems, more than 6 kilowatts. This is not surprising. EVs are on the rise. So users with EV, around 14% of participants had EVs, and another 10% was considering of purchasing EV. In terms of the pools, 27% of the users had a swimming pool, and around 3% were considering to get a swimming pool as well. So in terms of their daily energy usage in kilowatt hours, the results we got was typical from previous data analysis, and studies have shown similar results, around 20 kilowatt hours per day daily consumption of the households. And some households are obviously much bigger users, as you can see, greater than 30 kilowatt hours per day. And there is a good majority also using less than 20 kilowatt hours as well. So this plot shows only users that don't have a solar system, and they don't have an existing solar. And when they were asked which of these three options would you consider, solar only, solar plus battery, solar plus heat pump, you can see the distribution. The majority is considering to buy solar only, and the other 35% is considering to buy solar plus battery, and we have 24% solar plus heat pump. What we can see is heat pumps are relatively popular, especially compared to, let's say, 5 years ago. People are a lot more aware of it, so the stats show that here. And for the users that have an existing solar system, now they were asked whether they would only like to upgrade their solar with green, whether they would like to upgrade their solar plus purchase a battery, or whether they would like to upgrade their solar and buy a heat pump, which is the blue. Now, again, most of them would like to upgrade solar and purchase a heat pump, which is, I believe, a great outcome. I personally think the affordability of heat pumps compared to batteries also playing a role here, but this is great that a good chunk of people are considering purchasing heat pumps. And a bit more than 1/3 is purchasing to upgrade, considering to upgrade their solar and purchase a battery. So yeah. And this figure is showing what percentage of users have gone beyond just playing with the tool and take some kind of action based on the recommendation that was shown. And so around 35% of the users took some kind of action, and those actions are classified in the quotes, plus they wanted to report, and some of them only wanted to report, and some of them went ahead and got some quotes for their households. So would like to summarize the key insights so far. So there is a lot of organic interest in electrifying homes and going solar, as shown by the number of users of the tool. So surprisingly, a lot of the homes that already have solar are looking for the next steps. How do we do more? What do we buy and purchase more to further electrify our households, which is promising. Something to look for here is there are a lot of systems with gas water heating still, at least from this proportion of the users. And this is a great opportunity for electrification. And as Tom mentioned, this tool will help them to find the best electric water heating system moving forward. Heat pumps are becoming popular, which is great, perhaps as well known as the batteries, as we saw on the stats. And 25% of users have or considering to buy an EV. And this shows that we really need to think seriously about charging and the required infrastructure to host this increasing fleet moving forward. And for the next steps, we will have more updates on the user statistics. We are aiming to get 100,000 users is the goal by the end of project, May 2024. The tool will include different water heating options, as well as smart water control. We will be following up with user feedback at the end of the project, and technical reports will also be available through Arena's knowledge sharing platform. So that's it for me. We will now move on to Josh Ellison from Rewiring Australia to give us further insights on the journey of electrification.
Cool, I'll just share my screen. My name is Josh Ellison. I work on research and development at Rewiring Australia. I'd like to start with some broad context on what makes this so important, and especially accelerating this and tools like this, which help to accelerate community electrification. So let me click, there we go. So a reminder that our emissions problem is primarily an energy problem. This is Australia, these are Australian emissions. The global emissions, I think, are 73% energy, which is to say that the bulk of the climate problem is an energy problem. Then we take that energy problem and look at how to solve it. In practice, solving that energy problem is a machine problem. At the ends of the capillaries of all of our emissions categories or our energy categories ultimately sit machines, whether they're coal plants or petrol cars or gas water heaters and so on. And we have to replace millions and millions of those machines for us to actually reach zero emissions. So in practice, our energy problem and our climate problem is very much a machine problem for the majority of our emissions, which is to say that Morpheus was right, the problem is the machines. The other thing to note is we need to move really fast, and this is where community electrification is really important to focus on. This graph is a year or two old now, but this is the pathway to stay below 1.5 degrees of warming. As you can see, we could have taken many far less steep pathways in the past, but it's become very steep given the amount of emissions we've had, and given our lack of high-speed progress. So if you translate this curve, 2022 to 2040, it looks like this, which means over the next 5 to 10 years, we need very fast emissions reductions to be on that track. And what that requires is think clearly about what those emissions reductions opportunities are that we have today, as well as, of course, the long-term emissions reduction opportunities. But it's really important to focus on what can be that really steep reduction curve. So these are Australia's emissions that we report to the UN, with land use and negative emissions excluded. So these are the traditional categories we're used to seeing. This is where we get the 78% energy. But that really, when you take that to where are the machines, where are the opportunities to actually take action on this decarbonisation? They sit on this right-hand side here. About 40% of those emissions are ultimately for exports, and they're things like the fossil fuels we use in trucks to dig up fossil fuels to export, or the leaks from those fossil fuels, or the agricultural emissions that we farm locally but ultimately get counted on our books even though that's exported. If we then look at our domestic emissions here, you can see the largest chunk is ultimately our households, the electricity we use, the heating for water, heating for space, and the vehicles we drive. Those same machines sit in our businesses. It's heating water, it's heating the businesses themselves, and it's the vehicles they drive, and of course the electricity they use. So this is a broad picture of our emissions and where they flow to. I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a minute. This is a simple version of that. Look at our broad picture emissions on the left. That turns into what do we use to create the Australian way of life and comfort, which is the domestic emissions here. And these are for the ultimately export emissions that create the income for our GDP. The largest chunk of those domestic are our households, then commercial, as was in the shown in the chart before. So then it's worth thinking about what are the actual emission reductions opportunities which sit under these things, and when are they ready from a time perspective. So these top emissions we can only get rid of when we change our exports and ultimately create a different income source like exporting green metals to be able to get rid of exporting those fossil fuels. So obviously stopping digging out fossil fuels quickly is hard, and we should do it, but it's hard. Same with agriculture exports. These top two are really industry renewables, industry electrification. There's a sliver there for waste. These household and commercial emissions are pretty much all community electrification. They are the electricity we can get from our rooftops. They are the vehicles we drive. They are how we charge our vehicles, for example, at solar, at our workplace. These are all ripe for electrification right now. This is where you have the cost of heat pumps and the cost of solar completely outperforming the cost of gas, and so on and so forth. So all of these, we can reduce our emissions today while saving money. And that's really important to contextualize. These are what become this section of our emissions reductions if we are to do really fast emissions reductions and meet our emissions targets. So you can see here we have the green line, which is ultimately electrification of homes, businesses, communities, light transport, all the things which we can economically do today and get those emissions reductions while saving people money. And then that gives us the time to solve the harder things like enteric fermentation, like steel, cement, aviation, and the harder to electrify sectors, which are in that orange area there. So that's how the opportunity of community electrification maps onto the scale and pace we need to hit our climate targets. All of that is going to need a lot more electricity. This is an average Australian home. You can see today we use about 100 kilowatt hours of total energy, including our vehicle fuels. So that includes the electricity, the gas, the vehicle fuels. Some homes use a little bit of wood, especially in Tasmania, so on and so forth. And there are generation losses at the coal plant. If we electrify that today, the energy use goes down to about 37 kilowatt hours. But what needs to be taken into account there, that's compared to our average home today, about 14 kilowatt hours, that's going to increase by 280% of the ultimately delivered electricity that home needs to fuel their vehicles or to charge their vehicles and to swap out their gas appliances for electrified appliances. So it's really important to consider where we get that future energy from, because that will really determine how much savings consumers end up getting in the energy transition. So think of that, we're going to need to get about 2.8 times the energy delivered to homes. Where should we get it? You can see here the breakdown of electricity costs. On the left, we have the standard, the average network cost. That is, of course, an average and is far more nuanced than that with different prices at time of use, different prices for what tariffs are on, so on and so forth. But ultimately, maximizing rooftop solar in communities creates the lowest cost energy transition. You can see rooftop solar is the one on the left there, which is about 4 cents financed at 4%. This was done in 2021. Finance price is a bit higher than that now, but still much cheaper. So the battery cycle is the one in the middle, which is also coming down in costs. A simple example of this is that if you buy a battery to put on the side of your house today, it's something like $1,300 a kilowatt hour. If you buy a $60,000 Tesla, it has a 60 kilowatt hour battery in it. So it's a cheaper battery than the one you put on your wall, and it comes with a free car. So obviously those battery costs are coming down quite fast. And then with the new DNSP tariffs, we have the community solar type economics on the right, which is that now we're starting to see solar soaking tariffs. We're ultimately sending that electricity around the community from one home to another home or another business is much lower cost than instead of, for example, a flat about 9.8 cents, the average distribution there. That's lower, and it might be 2 cents during the middle of the day during the solar window because the network is below capacity and can spare the capacity to share that around. So it's really important we consider maximizing the amount of rooftop solar in our communities. This is both on homes, on businesses, and actually also in other community areas. So, for example, we did a recent analysis that the car parks and train lines that are in our communities, if covered in solar, would add an extra 7 kilowatt per home of solar. So it's like doubling the residential capacity over our car parks and our train lines that are in communities. And obviously, you then need far less infrastructure to send that energy to the homes nearby in that community, which creates the lower cost end system state. The other thing to add here is that electrification is the efficiency we've been looking for a very long time, and this is often not emphasized enough. So we spent 100 years trying to make the internal combustion engine more efficient so that people could pay a little bit less for their petrol and drive a little bit further for the same petrol tank. And you have an electric car which can use 3 or 4 times less energy to achieve the exact same thing. And this is a cost chart, not an energy chart, but can also achieve the same thing at far less cost. The same can be said for heat pump water heaters, for heat pumps themselves, and for cooktops. An example here, of course, you can't fully heat your heat pump with solar. In this example, it's assuming 30% of heating load ends up being able to be done in the solar window. But you can, as we've mentioned earlier in this, you can, with smart water heaters, put most of your water heating into that solar window, which is going to massively lower the total cost of living for a home. All of this is great for energy nerds like us, where we can look at this and go, cool, that's a great idea to go and buy this. But what's really important is to make it practical for every home. And that includes not only we need finance products, of course, so that every home can, for example, finance solar over a long enough period of time so their cost of living doesn't have to increase, so that they can ultimately have lower cost of living ongoing from day one. But it also relies very heavily on us actually getting this information out there and making it really easy for homes to understand this opportunity that they have. The one way I like to refer to that is we have a massive project, which is Project Practicality for the entire country, which we need to make electrification practical for every home and business. And the faster we do that is the faster we get our emissions reductions, because we know, for example, with solar, that homes and businesses can save tons of money doing this, but we still only have, I say only, it's more than practically anywhere else in the world. We only have 35% solar adoption. We only have like 2% or so in businesses, even though their loads correlated to daytime. So, that's a practicality issue. Like, businesses will obviously save money, but they're often renting. We have the same with households who are renting. It's ultimately a practical dilemma of how to help those people understand how to electrify and how they can practically do it within the scope of the situation they're in as a home or a business. So ultimately, we'd like every home business to be going through that checklist pretty much. And that's what why I really like this tool, is ultimately taking people down this journey in a step-by-step way that can help them meet their both saving money targets and our emissions targets. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. That was great. Now, next up, we have Jemima from 1 Million Women giving us a presentation. So take it away, Jemima.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Whoops, sorry, I've lost my we go. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for having me and for joining us today. So before I get started, I would like to acknowledge our traditional custodians and carers of the land on which I live, work and play, the Wanneroo people. And I would like to pay my respects to elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to all First Nations people present here today. So my name's Jemima, and I'm the Events and Team Coordinator for 1 Million Women. We're a movement of over 1 million women and girls around the world who are stepping into their agency to act on climate change by changing the way we live. So a bit of background info on who we are. 1 Million Women was founded in 2009 by Natalie Isaacs. And since then, Nat has dedicated herself to empowering women and girls to act on climate change. And under her leadership, we've actually grown to a movement of over 1 million women around the world across all our social channels. As a pioneer in the gender and climate change arena in Australia, Nat's philosophy is that real behaviour change begins with personal action. And Nat is an amazing example of that herself. Nat has not actually been a long-term climate role model herself. She used to be a cosmetics manufacturer, so she was all about the overpackaging and selling you plastic, essentially. She thought it wasn't her issue and that someone else would solve it. It wasn't in her job description, and she thought that she was only one person, so what difference could she make? All that changed when Nat pretty much went on her own electrification journey. So her first action was to get her household electricity consumption down by 20%, which she did. She saw her final electricity bill after doing this and realized that she'd saved all of this electricity and money at the same time, and that she actually was quite powerful. In that moment, she took action and ownership of the issue, and a movement was born. That one action propelled Nat onto the next. She went on and got their household food waste down, stopped over-consuming, and went from the camp of inaction right through to starting women's movement. Our theory of change really mirrors Nat's story, and we say just act. If an action sees a result, no matter how small that action is, it will move you on to the next one. It will help us find our voice and build our confidence to influence others. And now we're in the decade that counts more than ever for living climate action. This really is a defining moment, and 2030 is a line in the sand, and globally we have to reduce our emissions by at least half. And our new campaign, I'm Ready, which we recently launched, is our commitment to that. It's our rallying call to women and men and everybody all around the world. And we believe that, and over the next 2 years, we are focusing on 3 things that we believe will have a huge impact. So number one is I'm talking with my local politician, where we'll be connecting women with other women in their community and empowering them all to have constructive conversations with their local MPs. Our second one is I'm making my money count. So we're using our economic power through the things we purchase or invest in for the good of the planet. So whether that, so giving the resources to everybody and the tools to help us make the right next big decision. So whether that's a new hot water system or going from gas to an induction cooktop at the end of its life, things like that. So you don't have to do it immediately, but we will give you the pathway to get there over the next 5 or so years. Another element of that is how we'll also be able to invest our super and our money in banks and institutions that don't fund and invest in the fossil fuel industry. And finally, we have I'm Ready to Transform My Home, which is what we're all gathered here today to discuss. So we're taking our community on an electrification journey that will give us all tangible, relatable, and a realistic plan to get off gas in particular, but also coal and oil, while also focusing on energy efficiency to cut costs and carbon and to make our homes healthy and comfortable. We want our homes to be ready for the renewable energy future that's on its way. So we know that gas is a fossil fuel containing methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas pollutant, and that it's currently used by 12.5 million Australians to heat our water, food, and homes. Using gas in our homes heats up the atmosphere and carries serious health risks, including an increased risk of asthma. And we know this transition isn't going to be easy, but switching from gas to electric is a transformation our homes must take.
Hey, Jemima, sorry to interrupt. Are you swapping slides right now?
Oh, yep. Sorry, I'll get there.
Oh, no worries. Okay. All good.
So yeah, actually, sorry, I have missed a couple in that. Yep. So so we're up here. Sorry, everyone. So electric appliances use less energy than gas appliances, making them cheaper to run as well. So an all-electric home can be powered by renewable energy, including the solar on your roof or through buying 100% green power. There are also low-cost energy-saving measures that we can take to make our homes work more efficiently too, as renters and as homeowners. Our recent I'm Talking Climate Big Weekend, which boasted over 300 registered get-togethers after we estimated and really hoped for 100, which was amazing. And it was our official launch of I'm Ready to the community. We provided a starter pack for hosts to share with their guests that included information about our electrification campaign. So yeah, our starter packs were created by our team. And also we had input from incredible people like Beyond Zero Emissions and our electrification partners, including the team at Solar Analytics. And so what you can see on the screen at the moment are two graphics that we included in our starter pack when we were exploring electrification. The first image shows 6 of the steps we can take to transform our homes. So we have energy efficiency, electrify your heating, electrify your hot water, electrify your cooking, electrify your transport, and install solar power. And so you can see there that we go a little bit in depth here of what it is that we'll be doing, but essentially our Women Power project breaks this down even further, and we really go into depth with the resources that are available and the things that you can do. So on the page adjacent to this one, we also had this graphic that's a checklist for people to follow along to help them better understand and know their homes, what changes they can make, and the sources of energy that they consume. And so the main point of I'm Talking Climate was to actually bring women together to have conversations and to then turn those conversations into climate action. So of course, we provided some electrification conversation starters, which you can see in this slide. And we did also send out a survey for our get-together hosts and their guests as well to complete during the get-togethers. And these stats, teamed with the responses that we've received since launching I'm Ready, have really indicated a public shift away from gas and fossil fuel energy sources and more towards electrification and renewable resources. So we asked attendees, have you thought about gas and why it's important to get our homes off gas before being part of the get-together today? And 64.29% said, yes, it's been on my radar for a while now, which was actually quite surprising to us and a great response to hear. And then another question was, now that you've started this conversation about changing over your gas appliances in your homes, i.e. gas hot water, gas cooktop and oven, gas heating, etc., what do you think the next steps? What do you think that might be the next steps for you to all that apply? We had 26.32% say, I'll definitely be going on the journey to get my home off gas as soon as I can. 29.82% said, I will or would consider changing the gas appliances that I currently have over to electric when they break down or need replacing. And 14.4% said there are no gas appliances in the home I live in, which again, fantastic. We also had a question, what has your I'm Talking Climate get together inspired you to do next? There were 7 options and 38.78% selected sign up to Women Power and go on our electrification journey with us over the coming 12 months to work out a plan to get off gas. Which leads me to our Women Power program. As part of I'm Ready and our I'm Transforming My Home campaign, we have launched our Women Power program, which is a 12-month transformation journey where we'll be turning homes into climate action superpowers. We know it's not all easy, and this is why we have set out to understand the challenges and the solutions to getting off gas and the ways we might need government subsidies and assistance. We can create energy efficient and comfortable homes that don't rely on coal, oil, or gas, and we want to explore this with women in all situations, from renters to homeowners. So over the next 12 months, we're really going to go on a deep dive into how we actually make the transition from gas to electricity and how we make our homes more energy efficient while also keeping them comfortable. How do we focus on making our homes healthy, and how do we completely remove ourselves from fossil fuels? And we'll be doing this with the 510 people who have signed up for our Women Power project. Again, we were expecting and really hoping for 10. When we hit 100, we were blown away, and we are now at 510, which is just absolutely unreal. So very excited to be having our second Zoom get together very soon. And at the end of this 12-month journey, we will actually have a tangible blueprint that we can then share with anybody who wants to go on this journey to transform their homes. One that provides information, resources, solutions that are specific to their individual needs and that removes barriers for those struggling to start or even those on the journey who need a bit of direction. And so we couldn't really do this without our partners at all either. So I just do want to give them a quick little shout out. Their industry knowledge, their insights, and the support they provide both us and their communities, as well as the wide variety of solutions and tools, are so invaluable. So thank you. And yeah, especially to solar analytics as well. It's such an amazing tool, and we're so excited to be able to direct people to something that shows actual results that you can achieve, and it'll be so great on our Women Power journey. And I'd also like to thank all the other incredible orgs, groups, businesses, and individuals who are using their personal power to step up and act, especially in the electrification arena. And thank you to everybody here today. And yeah, I'll share a few links and things in chat if you want to sign up or check anything out. And I'll also put Nat's New Jones's episode link in the chat where you can check out Nat's own electrification journey. She's just starting. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jemima. That was really great. Really exciting to see the woman power in action. Next up, Saeed Tehrani from Reclaim Energy. Saeed, take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Baran. Let's see if I can share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm Saeed from Reclaim Energy, and we are basically manufacturing heat pumps and components associated with the heat pumps. I'll give you a brief history of Reclaim. So Reclaim has been basically Reclaim Bears has been in basically 2016, but the knowledge behind Reclaim Energy is coming from Apricus, Australia, which has been manufacturing and selling solar evacuated tube hot water systems in Australia since 2003. And the reason that the company invest and just do more work around heat pumps was the fact that we have been seeing issues that we had with solar hot water systems. Not telling you that they haven't been good, it's just meaning that there has been some areas for improvement, that we realized that solar hot water is not perfectly doing everything we want the hot water system to do. That's why we switched to another renewable system. So heat pumps, air source heat pumps are renewable. Solar hot water use solar energy, solar thermal, solar hot water systems, and basically air source heat pumps, they use air. So both of products are eligible for renewable incentives and renewable source of hot water systems. Why we focus on CO2? Because CO2 is a natural refrigerant, and basically global warming potential of the CO2 is 1. This means that this is the cleanest refrigerant you could use in the market. So the heat pump itself is made in Japan. We have done lots of years of R&D with a Japanese manufacturer. The tanks and control are made in Australia. And in terms of the number of cells, started in 2019, and as you can see here, each year we have kind of developed or triple our cells in the next year, and I think we have a cumulative of maybe around above 12,000 units now in the market. And Reclaim Energy has won a few awards. The very recent one is the Victorian Premier Sustainability Award last year. In terms of the product itself, how installed in the households, it's a very simple installation. It has a very minimal plumbing between heat pump and the tank. The heat pump is an outdoor unit. As I said, it's the air source heat pump system. It must be outdoor. Your storage tank can be indoor. And the distance we can have between heat pump and a tank is basically about 15 meters. We need to have a separate dedicated circuit for heat pumps, and the control should have its own power supply. And in terms of how the system works, basically this controller reads the temperature from the tank, and it tells the heat pump how to run or when to run. In terms of the stop temperature is based on reaching a target temperature at the sensor level on the tank. And there is a clear reason for us to not run just based on the timer. And we have to basically be considerate of temperature because according to the Australian standards, we must meet the Legionella requirements for hot water storage tanks, which means that we must meet the Legionella requirements. And the way most of hot water system and storage tanks meet the requirement is reaching a 60 degrees inside the tank on a daily basis. So that's one of the big differences that we have with like instantaneous hot water systems, where they don't have to necessarily run every day. It runs based on the demands. But basically, when you have a storage tank, the benefit is you can basically have a peak shaving. You can basically run the system during the off peak or during the best time of the day. However, you have to do it necessarily once a day. There are some savings and certificates about the system. So we expect around 4 gigawatt of energy saving compared to electric systems, which is equivalent to 3.5 tons of CO2 basically abatement per year. Again, in terms of the cost saving, it really is sensitive to what your supply installation cost is, what rebates you get, and what's your energy tariff. But that's roughly around $600 a year. So our journey started with solar analytic in 2018, where we actually wanted to understand the performance in the Australian conditions in the real household. We put the solar analytics in for just the power monitoring and also the solar PV generation. And I remember back in 2018-19, Baran himself did some analysis in terms of finding the optimum time for heat pump to run. Some of the findings that actually help us to build the first generation of the control was the fact of the heat pumps normally run, our heat pumps actually only run for maybe 2 or 3 hours, and it only roughly using like 2 or 3 kilowatt hour a day for a heating cycle of a tank. And normally we know that this is a typical solar power generation curve, and we know that, okay, the peak hours or where you have the excess PV, normally it's 10 a.m., 11 a.m., around that time. And we normally we know that our usage is much less than a solar PV generation. So this graph, yellow graph, is just for a very, very small solar PV system with 1.7 kilowatt, and our heat pump still using much less energy. So our heat pump peak usage is kind of 0.9, 0.8, or 1 kilowatt. So we did more studies using solar analytic back in 2018, 2019, trying to see how much actually this unit use each month. And we realized that in many, many cases, it's still that probably 3, 2, or 4 kilowatt hour a day. And that's average of like 80 kilowatt hour a month. And like for this particular case study, which was in Victoria, we realized that the customer actually achieving 83% reduction compared to the pre-existing system, which was the electric element system. We did the same study like in Launceston 2018, got the same result. The system was average usage was like 90 kilowatt hour a month, and still the daily usage was 2.5 to 3. I have to be very clear about that. That 2 or 3 kilowatt hour a day is sensitive to number of people. It's sensitive to how much water they use. It's sensitive to where the system installed. So, and this is basically tells us that this is one heating cycle. I'm just gonna explain the number of heating cycle in my next slide. So this type of studies was done back in 2018. Then beginning of this year, we launched our new control, which gives us a lot of flexibility around what happens in the systems. So it's a Wi-Fi control now we got, and it does the power monitoring by itself. And basically now we get access to lots of data. Basically, wherever each customer buy one of these Wi-Fi systems, we can see the usage, they can see the usage, they can see how much they run in a day, how much they run in a week or in a month. And the result after 5 years is still consistent. We still see for a lot of customers, we see that the average they use is around, like, again, it's less than 3. And I have to be very clear about the fact that this is based on average of 1 heating cycle a day. So what happens is we use that data back from 2018. This whole graph is giving you some comparison of different hot water systems you can have. It's solar hot water you can have a gas storage system, you can have a solar hot water with electric boosting, or you can have a solar hot water with gas boosting. So the blue columns, they show the energy basic consumption, and basically the orange ones is the average cost based on the assumptions you see here. So going back to the payback calculations, it's really sensitive to the energy tariff we use. And it also is a matter of fact of how much energy you use. But on average, we can see when I say, for example, in one of my early graph, I said we have a 4 gigawatt of energy saving. This is based on, for example, 1,000. This is basically, I think, kilowatt hour. So this is basically 1 megawatt hour for a reclaim heat pump. And if you compare it with an electric system, this is kind of 4,000 kilowatt hour less, which is basically 4 megawatt hour of energy saving. So we know that where the numbers come from in terms of saving, because that energy has been measured by whether the third-party equipment, which is solar analytics, and now these days with our own internal controller. So this is the generation of the controllers we have. We had a version 1, which is the black one, and then we have the middle one. We had some improvements. There is no big changes between 1 and 2. We only add a new option to this, the version 1.1 control, which is the middle one, and then we launched the version 2, which is the right one. So before I explain the left table, which is the options available on our controllers, I just want to show you this blue graph, which are the heating cycle of a heat pump. So basically they start, they ramp up, and they stop. And start means that the temperature in the tank has been less than the set point, and the stop again means that they have reached the set point. And why this customer, for example, have 1, 2, 3 cycles? One reason is there are a high water use customers. And what they have done on the controller, for example, in this case, they have used option 1. When they select option 1, it means that the heat pump is always on demand. Whenever the temperature drops below the dead band, the heat pump can restart again. We have a lot of customers that they actually don't allow their system to have this behavior. They limit the operation by selecting, for example, option 2, 3, or 4, which are preset options, and tell the heat pump only to run during a specific time of the day, or they basically select the exact time that they want the system to start. And as I explained before, they don't have control on a stop, because the stop of the heat pump is based on reaching a target temperature. So this number of cycles basically can be controlled by options, and it's basically also sensitive how much hot water they want to use. So to make our system a bit smart and trying to give flexibility to our customers, we created option 7, which means that if they have a PV system on the roof, or they have a home management system, and they have a dry contact switch, and dry contact switches, they can be wired, or they can be Wi-Fi. Then if you have a hardwire between your dry contact switch and our heat pump, they can actually select option 7 on a controller, which means that the inverter or a home management system can make a decision of when the system should start. And recently we have done, we are actually in the middle of developing an API integration with Solar Maximizer tool with Solar Analytic, which means that now using our Wi-Fi controller, because the customers have a Wi-Fi on their controller, they can actually select whether they want to give control of their hot water system to the Solar Maximizer tool. If they select that option on their basically mobile app, then it enables Solar Maximizer to make a decision. And what Solar Maximizer does, they send back a signal to the controller in terms of when the system should be running. And then the controller send a signal back to the heat pump to run. So this is a very exciting project. This is the first step. I mean, this is going to be started with Solar Analytic, but based on the feedback we have received from the market, we know energy retailers are interested in API integration. And also there is a lot of like home management systems that are interested in API integration. So this is, I think, we think that's the future. At the same time, we know that the limiting factor for us is the fact that we can only allow the start time. We cannot allow for the stop. And that's because of the Legionella problem in the hot water system. That's why we cannot give the full flexibility to end users. In terms of other future developments that Reclaim does, we are considering, because a lot of households, they live in apartments, and if you live in an apartment, it's very hard to use heat pumps because the heat pumps, they are outdoor units. That's why in apartments, probably you need to have a centralized hot water plants. And when you say you need to have a centralized hot water plants, normally you can go to the commercial size heat pumps. At the same time, there are domestic dwellings that you can still use a bank of domestic systems and basically meet the demand. So that's another space for us to have more development. And thank you, everyone. And I hope that we have more discussion in the Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you, Said. Really great to hear about the developments at Reclaim over the last couple of years.
Thank
you. Now, we would like to open the floor for Q&A as well as discussions. You can unmute yourselves or write your message in the chat box, and we'll make sure your question goes to the right person for answer. Yeah, any thoughts, any questions, any feedback from the audience?
I'll kick off. Oh, no, I will not kick off. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. That was really, really useful. It's so interesting to see all the different perspectives. I was just wondering if there's any thought being given to like the process of financing all of those changes, and like, because that seems to be the biggest barrier for most people, is just going, how do I get however many $1,000s to make that change, and whether there's any kind of yeah, it's, I suppose, outside the energy nerd kind of group, is like that seems to be the biggest challenge that I've come across.
Yeah, we're working pretty hard on trying to find good solutions to that. There are like lots of different avenues. For example, like there are some degree of banks which offer green loans, and like generally the main problem with those is that they most of the time don't have the lifetimes you want. Like you want that to be a 10-year loan or 15-year loan and so on, because otherwise someone has to increase the cost of living and then to get a decreased cost of living in 3 or 5 years time once the loan's paid off. So that's one option, but obviously that doesn't reach everyone. People can put it on their mortgage, again, doesn't reach everyone. There's a lot of work needs to be done there. There are a few council rate-based options for this as well. I think the main place that is most available now is Victoria, and then will hopefully soon be available in New South Wales and Queensland. But that essentially enables you to finance it against your council rates. I would really like to see a retailer agnostic finance on your bill, because that is the most impactful place for it to be. Because ultimately, if you are financing solar, for example, and let's say you're going to save $1,000 a year, I'm just picking numbers off my head, $1,000 a year, and you need to pay $500 a year in finance, if you're paying that separate to your energy bill, it still looks like an added cost, and it's kind of then you pay your energy bill, which has actually gone down. If you can combine those, then it's really good, because then people can see, cool, my energy bill just went down and nothing else happened, and now I have solar on the roof. One of the things there, though, it's really important is making sure people have the choice to be able to switch retailers as we go through the energy transition, because we really don't want to, for example, be locking people into a retailer for 10 years or 20 years when electricity prices are going to change, solar is going to get cheaper. Like, we want most of the savings to ultimately go back to the home or the business, which means facilitating the finance so that they can buy it themselves and then get the savings themselves.
Cool, thank you. Super interesting.
I'll jump in quickly as well. So with our electrification campaign, like our Women Power, and I know that the name makes it sound like it's just for women, it's definitely not. We're sort of going on a journey where we'll be looking at these things specifically, because we do want to appeal to everybody, from people in public housing to renters to homeowners, and it'll be looking at the little changes that you can make at first that have a bigger cost savings than other bigger choices that you may invest more money in. So then you're getting that little bit of savings that you can then invest in bigger projects and things like that. So we're looking at it from a whole range of different lenses, and we're also looking at what subsidies are available and government support and things like that. And in our political campaigning, I guess, we'll be initiating conversations with MPs about what they do, what they can do to support infrastructure support for EVs and electrification in their particular electorates, but what they can also take to Parliament House and things like that as well. So we're sort of looking at it from a whole different range of perspectives. And yeah, just pretty much trying to lay it all out flat for everybody. These are the costs. This is what's available to support. And yeah, these are the steps you can take. So simple changes like insulation or draft proofing, things like that, like even just stopping a bit of breeze coming in from under your doors and things like that, how they can actually accumulate into bigger savings and things off your electricity bill, which you can then invest elsewhere. So yeah, great question as well. Like, that's something we've really put a lot of thought into, because being a renter myself, it's something that I would like to be a part of, but I'm usually feeling pretty left out of the conversation because I can't put solar on my house or things like that. So yeah, thank you.
There's another aspect that I would like to point out, the regulatory side of things. So I know some state governments have, for example, subsidies and incentives to purchase a heat pump, which is great. But there are still some barriers, for example, going out of gas and to buy an electric system. And for example, if you'd like to disconnect your connection from gas, that may cost quite a lot of money. And so I think we need more support from the governments and regulators in terms of incentivizing this change more quickly. And so research projects like this can help to spread the message out there as well, to get more help from our politicians and regulatory bodies. Yeah, thanks for the question, Tagal. I appreciate it. Tom, you were about to say something. Did you want to continue?
Yeah, I guess it's maybe a little bit related to Luke's first question in the chat. I was going to ask Saeed, you showed that your heat pump sales, I think since 2016 or maybe it was 2019, have been doubling or tripling. Do you have any insights into why you think that is? Like, is it educational, or is it affordability, or is it like new homes? Are they whacking heat pumps on new homes now?
There have been different reasons. Like, I think heat pumps have been generated some trust in people. Like, people are trusting heat pumps more than before. That's one of the reasons, because back in 2010, apparently it has been a heat pump boom in Australia, and then most of them fail. And then now still a lot of plumbers, you can find them, they don't like heat pumps. That's one. Unfortunately or fortunately, since 2018-19, because of a lot of incentives, especially in the Victoria, because there have been more rebates in Victoria than any other states, there has been uptake of heat pumps. that has been generating a lot of sales. It has been a downside for a lot of incentives in the market, and that has been concerning us and a lot of other manufacturers, which we believe that we shouldn't say that we are a quality suppliers, but there have been very low quality heat pumps now in the market. Now you can have a heat pump for $30 installed at your home, or $0. And it has been a lot of conversation around that. It should be a lot of customer awareness about, okay, if the heat pump is good, if it provides financial incentives, where should I go, or what I should do? That's also something in addition that I think we should be encouraging and basically educating the customers, because this is not about electrification only. It's, if you want to, it has to be smart electrification, and it has to be in a way that people don't trust in the 2 years or 3 years. You don't want to put necessarily electrify with every single product you add there, and that's the cheapest product, and then you end up having problem 3 years and say, I don't want to electrify. So I mean, that's one thing. And going back to your question, Tom, again about why it has been increasing, because I think the quality that we show, and to be honest, like when we even ourselves, when we compare it with the solar hot water, that phone call for solar hot water keep ringing every day. When we sell reclaim system, we don't have a phone call normally, and it has been like 5-6 years now. The system works, it's super efficient, and I think because we have shown the data, like when you have a product which you cannot prove it's working, or you cannot show them how much they're saving, but with a lot of heat pumps now, because this is electricity, you can see it, you can actually show it how much you're saving. That's encouraging. But I would say definitely incentives has helped the growth as well, in addition to the quality of the product itself.
Thanks, Said. Thanks, Tom. So I just want to have make another comment, and then we can move on to Luke's questions on the chat box. It's really great to see, Said, that heat pumps are working and operational and delivering savings in states like Victoria and Tasmania, which has colder climates than, say, New South Wales or Queensland, obviously where you're located. But yeah, it's just really great to see that they're still effective even in those colder climates. So I'm just going to follow the order of the questions here. So Luke is asking, what are your collective insights on the preferences/attitudes of the construction industry on home electrification? Anyone wants to pick up on this? I guess, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
no,
go on, Josh. Go on.
I think largely good. Although I think there's I do think we need to paint a better picture of what the future of housing stock looks like, and have that more available to both the construction industry and homes. Because I think it is quite like there is a lot of information out there that that tries to push, for example, gas water heaters to be installed, and that they'll run hydrogen through them or something insane like that. And like, if you just think about this naturally, if you build a house today and your mortgage is 30 years, like that gas appliance is going to have to get ripped out before the end of the mortgage if we're going to hit zero emissions in 2050. So like, it's obviously a very silly decision. Not just economically, like in every way, economically through emissions, and just physically because it'll have to be taken out. So I think it's there's still a lot of work to do there, but we do get sometimes get some friendly fire from you should replace it with another gas water heater, which I don't think is necessarily as we've discussed the best option at all for economics, for emissions, and so on. But largely speaking, I think there is a lot of work being done, a lot of progress being made in Australia on lowering ultimately the install cost by being efficient and being familiar with installing heat pump hot water systems, for example. Like a really good example of this over in New Zealand, it's about, even if you take out the subsidies you were mentioning on heat pump hot water systems, it's about a double or about $10,000 or so to get a heat pump hot water system installed. And like, it's, it's less than half that in Australia. And it's, if you have the subsidies, it's even less. So I think it's, we have made quite a lot of progress, which is maybe not as obvious to us in Australia when we look at other places doing these same installations. But there is also a lot of work to be done to make sure that every appliance replaced is ultimately electric and every new build is ultimately electric.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. And I just have another comment there on the construction industry. I mean, I guess Australian households are known as their notoriously bad quality in terms of thermal insulation, and hence very poor energy efficient households. Like, we could actually solve those problems from the root, and you may not need as much heating cooling load if you design the households with appropriate insulation and double glazed windows, etc. So I think the new built households are getting better with that, with different government star ratings and mandates on the new built households. So hopefully we won't have as much load needed, especially for our heating and cooling. So the second question from Luke: what are the motivations of consumers towards home electrification? Greenhouse gas abatement may not be as big a driver as cost savings. Would anyone like to answer this?
Yeah, I can quickly talk from our perspective at Solar Analytics, because we do a lot of user research on this kind of thing. So two categories: solar buyers, so people looking to purchase solar, don't already have it, and solar owners looking to upgrade. So for solar buyers, it's overwhelmingly savings. They're looking to make savings, is the number one. And then number two is always greenhouse gases, so doing their bit. And then number three is independence. So independence from the grid, essentially. So yeah, being more in control of their energy. And then for solar owners, it's generally kind of equal between greenhouse gas and savings. So they're already making savings, obviously, because they've got solar, but they're interested in how can they do more. But also, I think there's a kind of, well, my boss calls it smugness, solar smugness. Once you have your solar system of, you're doing something good and it feels good, and you want to tell people about it and you want to do more. And so yeah, from surveys with solar owners, they're more interested in like savings, yes, but independence and greenhouse gas reduction is way up there too. So it's kind of like, oh wow, I have this amazing technology now. I'm doing my bit. I want to do more. So yeah, two different groups of people. That's what we find.
I think to add to what Tom said, which I agree with, and is a really good point. People are realizing that they actually have some control in solving climate, which I think we ultimately, we've had a long time of people thinking they have no kind of avenue for action here. And especially where their avenue for action is also going to save them money. That's a huge motivator. But there's a lot of people who didn't know that, that they could actually have a meaningful impact, and a meaningful impact that's fast by going down this path.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Tom. Moving forward, we have a couple comments on Saeed's previous point about poor product quality for very cheap heat pumps. I guess that's becoming more of a pain point for system owners. So again, I think there is a lot more to be done in this space through regulators. Stephen has a comment.
Hey, do you want me to just
Yeah.
talk to it? Yeah. Thank you very much for all the presentations. They're all great. And it's, really stimulating to be able to talk and hear about all this kind of stuff. My comment was just on electrification, which is clearly a strong theme of today, but a lot of the, I guess, data was looking at average kilowatt hours or how much you could save from putting on solar and battery. But as good as that is, and it is really good, like I feel like a part that was missing was the calculations involved with switching from gas to electric cooking, from gas to electric hot water heating, that kind of thing, and sort of teasing apart that average household data across all these households into what it looks like when you separate those two houses up, like 20 kilowatt hours a day, for example. For an all-electric household, that sounds pretty low to me, especially in the context of, say, suggesting that a off-peak hot water system is, 12 to 14 kilowatt hours by itself. So I think that is just a suggestion for what might be next or what could be added, is including calculations for that kind of appliance changing as well. Thanks.
I think like a related point would be like one of the things I've often wanted just to help friends to electrify would be the ability to see the, like, if you assume that their primary motivation is economic, like the stacking of, like, if you did all of these things at once, like how does that kind of work in terms of like length of payback for those different things, so they can kind of visualize, like, does it make sense for me to do, first start with my heating and then move to the hot water pump and, things like that. Like, is there a way to kind of visualize that transition over time, showing like the benefit of each part of it?
Yeah, I think these are really great points to make it more easy and understandable for different types of households, as well as Paul, you mentioned, and Stephen mentioned. If you have a gas cooking versus gas heating, like, strategies may slightly differ, at least what's like the first kind of lowest hanging fruit based on what sort of households and appliances you have. I think that's
and Josh's information about the speed at which this has to happen is kind of the scary part, right? Because it's like, if it has to happen in 5 years, it's like a lot of people need to have a lot of spare cash in the next 5 years to be able to make that sort of move without any subsidies or massive reduction in the cost of providing things like heat pumps. Like, I have a reclaimed heat pump, but like, if that died, I don't know if I have a spare $5,000 sitting around to buy another one like tomorrow. So it's kind of really interesting little part of the puzzle.
Yeah, great points.
I might just jump in quickly. What Watches are actually someone that we work with closely here and there as well, but they've actually got an app that helps you look at real-time savings and things like that. I know it's not really great for the planning and that side of things where you're trying to look at what the best decisions would be, but we are also working with BZE and a fair few of our partners to compile exactly that sort of information, like what smaller, less costly changes can you make? Yeah, as I mentioned before, to sort of pile up, and what are some of the more expensive things that may not be worth it in the long run in terms of percentages of energy consumption saved and things like that. So I'm so sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there is one particular action, I think it was tinting windows, that costs a fair bit of money but only offers a small percentage of return in regards to cost savings and energy savings as well. So really taking all of that into consideration as well. And then with What Watches, they provide actual in-time changes, and you can see like the money you've saved, the electricity you saved, and they also do take that data and look at what alternatives you could make, like from your electricity bill and things like that, and what changes you could make, the savings that those changes could then give you over time, etc.
Yeah, thanks, Jemima. Monitoring is definitely a very important element, giving transparency and also visibility for household owners to be proud and to actually see how much reduction they can achieve with these sort of upgrades or changes. Yeah, great point.
I'll add to that quickly. I know we're almost out of time. One thing I think that a lot of these calculators lack is personalization. So we try our best to make it personal to that person by asking them questions, but at the same time, there's only so many questions you can ask before someone's like, oh, forget it, I don't want to go through this. But one thing that will hopefully change that in the next year or 2 years or so is CDR, which probably some people have heard of here, consumer data rights. So basically that's being applied to the energy sector now. So it already exists with banking and telcos, which is, so consumer data rights is basically you own your data. So if you move banks, you can tell your previous bank, hey, I want my new bank to have all my previous history. And same with telcos, and now that's with energy. So if you change retailers, or basically you're in charge of your energy, so you can provide it. So for an online tool like we have, you would be able to hopefully be, or any online tool be like, hey, this is my energy data, tell me what I should do. So that comes directly from the smart meter. So it's a painful process for tools to get accredited. We're going through it at Solar Analytics at the moment ourselves. So it's not easy, but once you're there, I think it'll be incredibly useful for your average consumer, because it can now be personalized and you're no longer grouped into the masses. I think that will be super important.
Thanks, Tom. Josh, you have your hand up.
Yeah, to add to what Tom was saying there, like yeah, I think that's will have a big impact, and I think it's really important to create that pathway for homes on like, ultimately most of these things will happen when something dies, like when their water heater dies or their space heater dies. Like that's the main replacement point for most of these things. But when you have this pathway, which you can show, okay, well, here's the energy it's currently using, it's going to use going forward. Here's what it costs you to currently run your gas water heater, and here's what it might cost you to finance a heat pump. Then all of a sudden, it actually becomes clear. It's like, okay, well, maybe I should replace my water heater a few years earlier than it's expected to last, because ultimately I'll spend more on the gas that I'm going to have to run through it than it would cost to upgrade it, and I'd be saving money straight away. So I think it's really important to help create that pathway for homes, and like a pathway for the situation they're in. Because if you're got a gas water heater that's using LPG tanks or a gas water heater that's using mains gas, like the cost is going to be quite different. The upgrade situation for every type of home and so on is going to be quite different. And I think building the tools that essentially take people on a journey with, hey, I have these appliances, I have this energy data from my CDR. What does the zero emission journey look like for me, and where should I, at what point should I spend money, and how much is it going to cost? Because that then also contextualizes, for example, how much solar should you get? You should probably get way more than you think, because you're going to be charged, plugging in a car to that solar in a few years' time, and so on and so forth. So I think connecting, and I guess maybe this is a suggestion for as we go forward. I know Solar Analytics and us have chatted about this as well. As we go forward, making sure we can create that plan for every household and eventually every business as well, on how they both financially and energetically transition to zero emissions.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Really useful comments. And yeah, this was picked up a couple of times, making that journey smoother and more easier for everyone and more clear as well. Yeah. And I believe, Tom, these feedbacks are really great for the further development of the tool. So that's one of the objectives of this webinar, which is great. I'm conscious of the time, and we've almost come to the end of the 90-minute slot that we have. Unless anyone has any last-minute comments, I would like to thank all the presenters today. Thank you, Josh, Jemima, Said, Tom. Appreciate the contributions, and I believe that was a really useful webinar, and also great to share what's been going on in different organizations and project partners. And yeah, I hope more people will join the movement in the way that they can do their best. So thanks again, everyone, and
thanks very much.
We will make this recording available with the participants, as well as if we may have some other points from the meeting that we may share after we discuss with Tom. So we'll be in touch again. Thank you.
Thank you, Baran, and everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.